Your life over again, what would you do different?
Not get married.
What's the best advice you can give to the younger generation?
Don't get married.
I know this is not going to sound romantic, but it is the reality of the situation. 70% of marriages will end in a divorce. And usually women are the ones that's filing for the divorce. Yet, we got the girlies running around here like a chicken with their head cut off, setting this as a goal. And if they don't achieve this goal, they feel like their self-worth is diminished. And this is an institution. All right? This is not the smartest business move, yet everybody still wants to participate. This is a huge responsibility. It requires a lot of chores, a lot of duties. Are you up for it? Because at the end of the day, this is like you getting on a roller coaster, and it's a 70% chance that it will fail you. Would you still ride the ride?
Can you make a video on why marriage doesn't benefit women? Oh, I sure can. I am not saying that women should not get married. This post is just about why it doesn't benefit women equally. Let's get started. Number 1, traditional gender dynamics and heterosexual relationships in this country essentially encourage men to remain independent while encouraging women to become increasingly dependent. Men provide, women take care of the home. Throw a kid into the mix with no recent job experience and it will be very difficult for that woman to leave that marriage, especially while also taking care of her children. Number 2, loss of identity. Again, traditional marriage encourages a woman to slowly compromise herself over time for the sake of her marriage, aka husband, who very rarely makes the same level of compromises in his marriage. Once again, throw a kid into that mix and there's absolutely no comparing them. Once a woman becomes a mother, she loses a huge portion of her identity, while her husband very often maintains his entire identity. 3, gender expectations. Who wants a live-in maid and nanny? Men. Men very rarely in marriage take any initiative when it comes to taking care of the children or the house. This often leads to them asking for lists and not really knowing any basic information about their own lives. Anything that they do is usually requested of them by their wife, who's already aware of what needs to get done. Men very rarely know what needs to get done. And in that way, they depend on the woman entirely to basically do everything, except make money. But often even women who work still have these expectations thrust upon them, and their husbands still remain pretty unhelpful, or just clueless. Number 4, emotional labor. Women are often expected to carry the emotional brunt work of every single relationship they're in, whether it's dating or marriage, but it gets worse in marriage. Again, these dynamics are very rarely discussed, it's just how the cookie crumbles. Most of the emotional work falls on women, which is extremely exhausting. Number 5, physical expectations. I've seen in marriages over and over and over again, the man gaining a huge potbelly, but the woman is still expected to remain attractive. Many men stop taking care of themselves, but still expect their wives to look good. So overall, I'll say this. The reason that I don't think that marriage benefits women is because they do nearly everything. And when anything needs to get done, they often have to ask or beg or ask a bunch of times. But ultimately, they're the ones holding most things together. Most of the critical information is in their head. Their husbands don't take the initiative to know those things on their own. And I think that's bullshit. And I'd like to end with this. I've said this before, but it's worth saying again. Most of these men who are so soft that they keep complaining about how they have jobs and that should be sufficient, working is not that hard. I probably make more money than most of the men who complain about it all the time. This excuse men make that having a job should be enough is ridiculous. It's not that hard.
Marriage won't benefit women unless you marry the right men. As for men, they can marry any women and still get benefit from the marriage. T. Such a great comment and something that I overlooked in my original video, so thank you. Of course, there are men that are not in advantageous relationships, okay? They exist. But overwhelmingly, I'm seeing women who have actually been in relationships and been materially worse off during and after talking about their experience. And I see a lot of men just talking about hypothetical scenarios where women are out gold digging their non-existent gold. So it doesn't seem to make sense when you think about how women want to marry the right guy. Men don't have as many requirements for women. As partners, it's just more about timing. But they don't have as many requirements because there's also so much less consequence for them if they mistreat women. I mean, even if you just look at like the Haley and Selena Justin saga, everyone is talking about the women. No one is talking about the man that has mistreated and disrespected not just those two women, but multiple women in his past. Those women, I don't know much about them personally. I'm sure they have their own like personality flaws. Both of them were just unfortunate enough to have their heart broken by the same guy, and it's inconsequential to him, you know. Yes, there are situations where men have to pay child support if they get divorced, whatever, but most of the time women initiate divorces. Single, unmarried women are happier than married women, and it's usually women that are at a greater risk of poverty after a divorce. So I think for most women, better to have no husband than have a bad one.
Y'all ain't gonna fuck with me after this, but what's new? The reason why women aren't rushing to the altar anymore is not because city girls are up by 10 or people just want to be outside. It's because of how embarrassing y'all make marriage look. There's more married men in my DMs than single men. What was the point? What was the point? For better or for worse means you get sick, baby, I got you. You lose your leg, honey, I got you. You lost your job, well, baby, you provided for this family for so long. Sit back, take a break, baby, I got it. Not you making a conscious decision to go fuck Felicia down the street. I didn't sign up for that. Now, before y'all attack me about what the hell I know about for better or for worse, I filed for divorce a couple years ago, and my life would have never looked the way that it looked now had I kept that ring. Marriage means nothing if you're disrespected and neglected. Marriage means nothing if you're hated, berated, or degraded. It just doesn't. I'll be the first to say that it is a piece of paper if the person you're committed to is not committed to you. So if you feel like these modern women need to go back to being wives, we will once you start respecting yours, but until then, we're gonna be outside.
Marriage isn't 50-50 ever. There are times I'm 70, he's...
I am eternally grateful for TikTok simply because it has made me realize that marriage really is not it. The fact that every single generation of women in our lives has, or not in our lives, in our families, has aspired for marriage and kids, and not that there's anything wrong with that, but the fact that like it has opened our eyes to realize that it really is not it. It really is not it. It is false advertising. That's what it is. Because when we're young, we're told and we're taught that it is happily ever after. That is where your happiness resides, in finding your prince and having a home and kids. And now we realize it's a trap. It is a trap. I am enlightened, and I love that for me.
That awkward moment, you could have used Google before leaving this comment, but let facts give you the facts. Marriage disproportionately benefits men, and women are quitting it in droves. Now, going through all of my data and research, I found 3 primary reasons why women just don't want to be married anymore. The first was them feeling held back. Now, you can pause to read, but I'll just sum up. Women are working more than they ever have, making up a little over half of the workforce. However, in many marriages, women are still seen as primarily responsible for domestic duties, despite having more on their plates with their careers. So despite the majority of households relying on 2 incomes, men and women still tackled those chores disproportionately. The statistics shown was, on average, men worked longer hours outside the home, yet even in families where women worked an equivalent or longer hours and even earned higher salaries, they still took on more of the household responsibilities. Second issue was women often take on more of the emotional burden. Now, despite communication being a key piece in a marriage, it's often an area where couples struggle. Generally, men are not taught how they can communicate and process emotions, and as a result, women often take on more of the emotional responsibilities. And over time, this takes a toll on somebody, mentally, physically, and certainly emotionally. Now, without the emotional support from husbands, wives are often feeling alone and without a source of support within the marriage. Now, this has helped men in other key areas, including being able to live happier and healthier than bachelors, and earn more money and essentially live longer. And number 3, women no longer tolerate consistent, unacceptable behavior. So it shows here that at some point in history, women did not work as much as they did today. Because of this, wives would rely more on their husbands for financial security. And this was even at the expense of abuse and negligent behavior. As a result, women are not willing to put up with consistent, unacceptable behavior from their husbands like they did before. In one story, a woman talked about her grandmother attending a 70-year wedding anniversary with this couple who were in their 90s. But the grandma was well aware that he used to beat her up every single day. Stories like this are becoming far more rare because women are unwilling to tolerate it. Where those women used to endure this type of abuse, physically and emotionally, it's because divorce was either not an option or it was considered taboo. So no, Marriage doesn't benefit women more, even if there is a benefit to it. And although there are benefits for women in marriage, and this is not an exhaustive list, I would challenge those of you who want to be married to women to listen to what it is that they're saying. Because the benefits for you in a marriage seem to be far greater than when you're without it.
So I have some advice for young women that could be perceived as pretty controversial, but I'm going to go ahead and say it anyway. If you are a heterosexual woman who knows for sure that you never want to get married, like you just don't see the benefits of that institution at all, do not move in with your boyfriend. Keep your places separate. At least 9 times out of 10, living with a man under patriarchy is equivalent to becoming that man's personal assistant, because that is how they've been conditioned to perceive and treat us. Living with a man without the financial protections that marriage provides essentially means that you are working for free. And trust me, I know that not all women are financially compensated after their marriage ends, but if you are living with a man, then you need to make sure that you are being financially compensated or protected in some way, shape, or form. Because you can't work to support your livelihood if you're working to support your boyfriend.
I made a post about how women don't benefit from marriage and the incels went crazy. In this video, we're going to go through all the reasons. But let's start here. The consensus from most men in the comments were that women do benefit from marriage through divorce. So they seem to be in agreement that the best part of marriage for women is leaving. If that were true, which it's not, I think that would make my point. Let's go through finances, child custody, and health. Is marriage worth it for women? The benefits mostly go to men. Currently, over 50% of households have a dual income. I read this as women are taking half of their own stuff. In those households, despite a dual income, women are still doing the lion's share of domestic labor and emotional labor. In a divorce, women's income drops on average by 20%. Divorced men see an average of 30% increase in their income. Post-divorce, 20% of women find themselves in poverty compared to 11% of men. Let's talk alimony. Alimony has been gender neutral since 1979. It's the breadwinner who pays. In the 1960s, 25% of men were paying alimony post-divorce. Today, that number is 10%. And I know the math is right here, but I'm going to say it anyway. 90% of marriages end with no alimony whatsoever. 90 to 95% of the time that alimony is paid, it was settled out of court, meaning a judge didn't weigh in and didn't order it. In the cases where a judge orders it, there's a large discrepancy between the spouse's income and assets. Short marriages are less likely to get any alimony. Judges are looking at if one spouse sacrificed their career or potential earnings. And so if they didn't, alimony wouldn't be awarded. Now let's talk child custody. Studies show that when fathers ask for custody, they get it. Conversely, as fathers tend not to ask for custody, they don't get it. Most custody cases are settled out of court. For absolute clarity, most fathers are giving custody to the mothers, not losing custody. Do you see the difference? Now we're going to talk about health, and that will lead me into my last point. Why do women even want to get married if it doesn't benefit them? You know when married women nag their partners? You really going to have that third beer? Babe, I think you need to go get that mole looked at with the doctor. Men seem to hate that, and yet it is the direct reason why married men live longer lives and healthier lives than unmarried men. I've read that men resist marriage because they know that it requires a substantial behavior change on their part. They associate marriage with increased responsibilities and potential financial loss. And yet, those things aren't true. Our culture sets expectations high for women and low for men. Getting married has historically brought a large change in how men see themselves and how they behave. If marriage has been a particularly strong signal of change in men's committed behavior, it would explain the stereotype of women pushing for marriage and men resisting. Tell me what you think.
She said the best day of her marriage was the day that he died.
Listen, I'm looking really crazy today, but I wanted to say marriage is a scam. Marriage was built off a very prehistoric and barbaric structure. We had to bring dowries into the marriage. Women were actually auctioned off to other families way before we was actually thought of. Before our mothers had us, the men in our families were saying, give me a cow and I'm going to give you my daughter when she turns 11 and 12 and 13, right? And then our private parts was sold up solely for the enjoyment of a man. Then We have to interview to make sure that we can take care of a man and have his offspring, right? So what's love about that? So modern day, now men don't want to take care of themselves. Men want to make sure that you can take care of them. When did that shift happen? When? Tell me when. My mom was married to my brother's father for 38 years. What was her job? To have his offspring and to take care of the home. My mother worked very, very hard to do that. Well, he was off doing his thing. So he just died recently. My mother gets a hefty Social Security check. And this is the very first time that he has taken care of my mother. Marriage is a scam.
All it takes is a simple Google search, but married men are better off than single men. They're healthier, wealthier, and happier. Single women, however, are better off than married women. Married men are happier than married women, and unmarried women are happier than unmarried men. Divorced men and married women have the highest rates of suicide. Let this marinate. Who benefits more in a marriage? Men. Study after study shows that married people eat better and are less likely to smoke and drink excessively. All of these healthy behaviors help explain why married people tend to live longer. However, men married to women tend to see additional longevity benefits than women married to men, for several possible reasons, and I can think of about 100. Marriage benefits men more than it does women. Married men are happier and healthier than their unmarried counterparts. Their careers also benefit, and married men are more likely than unmarried men to be in the top 1% of earners. On the other hand, women's health doesn't improve significantly with marriage. In fact, women's health is much more tied to the quality of the marriage. While even bad marriages seem to benefit men, women's health suffers a bigger impact than men's if the marriage is bad. And to top it all off, nearly 70% of all divorces in the US are initiated by women, usually due to domestic violence and cheating. Marriage benefits men more than women. Men stereotypically avoid commitment, but married men are happier, healthier, and wealthier. And yeah. Extant research suggests that having a romantic partner has more benefits in terms of higher subjective well-being for men compared to women. The primary theoretical explanation for these well-being differences is that men's romantic partners tend to be their primary source of perceived social support, because men revolve their entire existence and worth around having a woman, and women are happy being single, and men just can't wrap their heads around how we're happy being single because they don't know how to be happy being single. Projection. Married men are more likely than single men to be in the top 1% of earners because of the benefits of women's unpaid labor. Yeah. Because of women, men are able to put themselves in a better position in life. Typical, stepping on our back to get ahead, of course. Married men earn between 10 and 40% more than single men. And marriage itself increases the earning power of men in the order of 10 to 24%. Men who stay married are in better financial shape than their peers. And married men earn more, save more, and generally have access to a second income, being the wife's second income. But that's not all. Not only does the wife have to provide a second income and work an outside job equally to the man, while men may look at these numbers and smile, women are not awarded the same financial benefit. No. In fact, women give up more of their leisure and professional development once a husband is in the picture. Does that sound like it benefits us more? And of course, we've been brainwashed by family, church, and television that it's important for us to have a husband because that's reverse psychology, projection, and gaslighting to convince us to do something that benefits you guys. It doesn't benefit us, but we're brainwashed into believing it's for us when it's really for you guys. You'd make a good wife if you cleaned more. Or you can get a maid or learn how to clean by yourself. Make sure you learn how to cook so you can take care of your husband, who's a grown-ass man and should be able to take care of himself. Don't be too honest, because men don't like it. Just don't do anything men don't like. Don't be yourself. Don't be fat. Don't have cellulite. Don't be too skinny. Don't have no ass, but don't have too much ass. Don't have small titties, but don't have saggy ones either. Don't have too long of hair with split ends, but don't have too short of hair where you look like you don't like men. Just living up to the endless indentured servitude expectations and so much unpaid labor that women have to endure for marriage, and the endless evidence and proof that I provided you, it's safe to say that yes, men definitely benefit way more from marriage than women, and women in fact don't benefit. It actually decreases our health and lifespan, and it's not good for us or beneficial. But it helps you guys, so of course you're gonna promote it to us like it's something we want and put us down for being single, and oh, no man will ever want you to be his wife acting like that. Oh, if you dress like that, I don't want to make you my wife, and trying to like reverse psychology us and bully us into thinking like not being your wife is a bad thing, like saying things like, oh, I would never make a woman like that my wife, when it's like we don't want to be wives anymore.